Battlefield doesn't have a tight narrative, but it does have a story to tell. In this video, I'm going to tell you everything there is to know about the world of Battlefield 2042. 15th of March 2014. Destiny is the best-selling video game. Russia occupies the Crimean Peninsula. The search continues for Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. Sergeant Henry Blackburn's squad comes under fire by the PLR, or People's Liberation and Resistance. On the same day, the PLR stages a coup in Iran, and the United States engages in what is referred to as peacekeeping operations. October 2014. Gone Girl is number 1 at the theaters. In the chaos of the coup in Iran, the PLR steals 2 suitcase nukes under the direction of a former CIA and GRU operative known only as Solomon. The international terrorist detonates one of them in Paris, killing 90,000 people. The West believes that Russia is behind the attack, and conflict between American and Russian special forces inflame tensions. Both powers resort to military force, and violence spirals out of control. Sergeant Henry Blackburn disarms the second nuclear weapon in New York. The war ends soon after. Early 2020. Sonic the Hedgehog is released. Admiral Chang, the head of the Chinese military, performs a military coup to take over the nation and eliminate the popular and progressive leader Jin Jae. With the help of the Russian Federation, Chang quickly declares martial law. War abruptly erupts as American special forces try to keep Jin Jae alive. Although the Chinese Navy is defeated at sea, the USA suffers huge casualties trying to fight Chang and his Russian allies. China is devastated after being invaded by both the USA and Russia. In the aftermath of the war, none of the nations are able to commit to any climate goals. Technology to mitigate global warming does not emerge. Economic inequality continues to spiral out of control. The world's climate rapidly warms. Western Europe continues to disintegrate after the nuclear explosion in 2014. Egypt begins to combat growing desertification, partnering with Senesco Agritech. Senesco forms a private army. A decade of chaos ensues as rising sea levels, collapsing economies, broken alliances, and other calamities begin plaguing the world. These crises eventually lead to the creation of 1.2 billion refugees from destabilized nations, made up of families, civil workers of varying professions, and even military personnel, all forced to work together to survive. They are dubbed the non-patrioted by international media, which leads to the refugees calling themselves nopats. Left behind, the displaced form together into ragtag fleets in search of safe harbor. They are families, farmers, doctors, engineers, and soldiers. The once privileged and the impoverished with backgrounds that are worlds apart, forced together, determined to survive. The nation of Qatar thrives thanks to skyrocketing oil prices. Cable internet is a thing of the past. Almost the entire world utilizes next-gen satellite internet relays over landlines. Hurricane Zeta, the world's first Category 6 storm. Global food and fuel shortages spark the Second Great Depression. Global shipping collapses. A third of all commercial ports around the world are destroyed from rising tides. Cape Canaveral sinks beneath the sea. Singapore builds a massive seawall and AI-driven cargo system. Brawny Island becomes the central hub of global trade. The island nation is protected by the United States. The Americans demand that they expel all nopat fleets. Military and civilian ships are worth more as scrap than cargo vessels. The shipbreaking town of Alang in India surges as thousands of boats are decommissioned. Many vessels disappear into the hands of nopats until the Indian military puts a stop to it. The European Union officially disbands following Germany's collapse. Fully autonomous combat drones become commonplace in an absence of international observance. Armed task forces of nopats form to escort convoys and fleets of non-patrioted across the globe. World governments crack down on them, declaring the nopat fleets as pirates. Humanity adapts to the new normal. Revolutions in energy, desert irrigation, hydraulic levees, and seawalls save coastal cities, reclaim farmland, and rebuild supply chains. Hope of finding stability leads some nations to reopen their borders. However, with no way to repatriate 1.2 billion people, nopats become a permanent fixture in all economic, military, and social policy making. Many nopats are still distrustful of the governments that exiled them and refuse calls to reassimilate. Nopat leaders emerge, inspiring a new identity unbound to former nationality, drawing a line in the sand between the old world and the new normal. Amidst the world rebuilding, sparks of friction erupt between the US and Russia as the last two superpowers vie for control of this fast-changing world. Mass famine is staved off by Senesco Agritech, which perfects genetically modified crops that thrive in the desert. Sand entombs cities across Central Asia. After years of fighting desertification, the rich and elite of the Middle East have abandoned the major cities. The only people still living in the capital of Doha, Qatar, are those who can't afford to leave. The oil runs out. The nation begins to collapse. Senseco corporate armies crush riots outside its walled farm facilities in the eastern desert in Egypt. Rising sea levels lead most nations to avoid further exploitation of the Antarctic, for fear of rising the water levels even higher. Russia ignores this and creates advanced oil drilling stations on the continent of Antarctica. A sudden space debris storm creates a Kessler effect, causing 70% of all orbiting satellites to malfunction and crash to Earth. The cause is unknown. The subsequent blackout causes mass devastation. Planes crash. Communication grids collapse. Already jammed global supply chains come to a standstill. Prices of oil, grain, and coal skyrocket exponentially. Unsubstantiated claims report that over 100,000 lives are lost. A world on the brink goes over the edge. No internet, no navigation, no surveillance, no storm forecasts. Geopolitical distrust surges overnight. No one can spy on each other, so no one can trust each other. Both the US and Russia claim the other is responsible for the blackout, while some suspect the nopats were behind it and accuse them of trying to sow anarchy. Daesung Electronics rises from the ashes. KNet becomes the successor to the global satellite internet. South Korea's economy becomes one of the most powerful in the world. A food and fuel shortage ignites a shadow war between the US and Russia. To maintain plausible deniability, both sides field nopat task forces as proxies in escalating conflicts over resources, promising the refugees a piece of what's left. So, here's a quick question for all the Battlefield fans who are interested in Battlefield 2042. Would you rather have the old classes back instead of the specialist system? I'm genuinely curious. If you'd rather have the old classes, assault, support, recon, engineer, that kind of thing, give this video a like. But if you're really excited about the new specialist system, replacing the old classes, give this video a dislike. I'm curious. Anyway, back to the content. Daesung Electronics has 60% of all internet traffic flowing through its servers. Songdo International Business District becomes a worldwide hub of espionage. Nopats form roving armies. The largest contingent is led by a man known only as Oz. Qatar collapses, its capital of Doha lost to the sand. The ship Copperfield is stolen from the shipbreaking yards in Alang. Open war between the United States and Russia is imminent. Nopats have no choice but to choose sides, fighting not for a flag, but for their future. Refugees escape from Singapore, aided by a Nopat fleet. Nopat spy Ji Soo Pike infiltrates Daesung and steals precious information. In Kourou, French Guyana, a group of Nopats hand over stolen data to a local militia. Americans occupy the former European Space Agency launch site. Russians form an armed conflict against the American presence. Nopats launch a satellite. Russia stops selling oil to Nopat navies until the non-patrioted swear allegiance to Russia. This is dumb, because you can't force 1.2 billion refugees to declare their loyalty to some country they're probably not allowed in. Nopats are kept hostage in Queen Maud Land, the location of the Russian oil base in Antarctica, until the movement declares its allegiance. This standoff ends when an American destroyer appears on the horizon. In reality, it is crewed by men loyal to Irish and hired by Oz, a mysterious Nopat leader. The Nopat vessel Exodus, captained by the American Kimball Graves, nicknamed Irish, approaches Cairo, but the vessel abruptly changes course. Graves sets sail for London. In the flooded former capital of Great Britain, Irish learns that American superweapon satellites are falling to Earth, providing valuable intel and apocalyptic weaponry. Oz is desperate to acquire the intel on the location of the falling satellites, but Irish decides that giving that Nopat leader the information will only lead to war. Oz is desperate to pit Russia and America at each other in one final conflict. Oz's forces attack Irish on the Exodus, and while most of them are killed, they are able to send the intel to Oz. Later that day, Russia and the United States both deploy forces to Doha, Qatar, to try to find the crashing satellite, tipped off by Oz. The satellite apparently has data on something called Operation Steadfast Refuge. American and Russian forces come to blows in the sands. This quickly escalates to full-scale warfare. America occupies Gorlitz in the former country of Germany. Russia and America engage in what seems to be a final apocalyptic conflict. Mithali Reed reports on the escalating war. Americans are fighting Russian-hired nopat task forces who are in turn fighting other nopats. The stateless agree on nothing more than staying alive. Oz is pulling the strings. He's already puppeteered the powers into an apocalyptic war. Maybe he has a plan, maybe not. But war is here. Nopats are forced to choose sides, fighting not for a flag, but for their future. This is the end of the video. If you have more questions about the setting, please leave a comment, like, subscribe, whatever, like all the stuff that YouTubers ask you to do. Thanks again for watching.